My son left me sitting alone at the airport on Christmas Eve. I had one small suitcase beside my chair, a boarding pass in my coat pocket, and my late wife's silver Christmas bell wrapped in tissue paper. I was supposed to hang it on the resort tree with my grandson. That was the promise. I waited. 1 hour. Then 2. Then 3. My son never came. My daughter-in-law finally texted me, "You'd slow everyone down." I read that sentence under the cold lights of Gate B12 while families walked past me carrying gifts, coffee cups, and sleepy children. Then I opened my phone and saw my whole family smiling at a luxury resort without me. The caption said, "Finally, a peaceful Christmas. Welcome to Final Act Revenge. Tell me where you're watching from tonight and what time it is where you are. Please take care of your health while you listen." Because 2 minutes later, my bank alert showed they had paid for that trip with money from the family trust. And before their plane even landed, I called the one person my son forgot still answered to me. My name is Tony Evans. I am 74 years old, and for most of my life, people in Des Moines knew me as the principal who stood at the front doors every morning, rain or snow, greeting children by name. Before that, I taught history, not the kind from dusty books only. I liked telling children that history was made by ordinary people who kept promises when nobody clapped for them. My wife Ruth believed the same thing. She taught music at an elementary school for 31 years. She could take 20 children with uneven voices, 2 broken tambourines, and 1 piano that went flat every winter, and somehow make Christmas sound holy. Ruth was not rich. Neither was I. We built our savings slowly, the way teachers build most things. 1 paycheck, 1 repair delayed, 1 used car kept another year. 1 vacation skipped so our son could have braces, books, and a safe bedroom. Later, a small piece of land Ruth insisted we keep became worth more than we ever expected. We sold our old house after retirement, added her life insurance, and put everything into the Evans family trust. Ruth was clear about one thing. This money should never make the family lazy, she told me. It should make them kinder. That was the purpose. Education, medical emergencies, grandchildren, care for the surviving spouse, and every December, a holiday account for bringing family together, not separating them. Ruth loved Christmas because she knew how lonely it could be for people who were forgotten. Every year, she organized a children's choir for nursing homes and community shelters. I handled permission slips, folding chairs, hot chocolate, and the bus driver who always complained until the children started singing. Ruth used to say, "A child who sings in December remembers that somebody made room for their voice." After she died in 2022, the house became too quiet. I kept her silver bell ornament in a small blue box. Every Christmas, I hung it last. Ruth always said, "Now it knows where home is." Kevin knew that. My son grew up with that bell on our tree. He grew up watching his mother turn music into mercy. But after Ruth passed, something shifted in him, not all at once, just little things. He stopped asking me to tell stories about her at dinner. His wife Allison would smile politely and change the subject whenever Ruth's name made the room too sad. Kevin would say, "Dad, not tonight," like grief had become bad table manners. I tried to understand. Kevin had pressure. His dental business in Omaha was expanding too fast. Private school tuition for Harper and Mason kept rising. Allison worked around wealthy families who treated vacations like proof of success. I saw the strain in his face. A father always sees it. But I did not know that strain had started teaching him to look at me differently. Slower, fragile, inconvenient. Ruth had seen more than I did. Years before that airport night, she asked our attorney, Janet Mills, to add family conduct language to the trust. I remember teasing her about it. "Ruth, you're making Christmas sound like a courtroom." She just smiled and said, "No, Tony, I'm making sure Christmas stays Christmas." She also left a sealed Christmas envelope with Janet. I never asked what was in it. I trusted my wife. And maybe I trusted my son too much. When a kind airport employee helped me get home that night, I placed my unopened suitcase near the sofa. Mason's wooden airplane gift stayed wrapped. The silver bell stayed in tissue paper on the table. Then Janet called back. Her voice was gentle but not surprised. "Tony," she asked, "did they use trust funds while leaving you at the airport?" I looked at the bank alert again. "Yes." Janet went quiet. Then she said the words that made the room feel colder than the airport gate. "Then Ruth's Christmas envelope can finally be opened." When I got home from the airport, the house felt too large. That is something nobody tells you about being old and alone. A quiet house does not simply stay quiet. It listens back. I set my suitcase beside the sofa and stood there for a moment with my coat still on. The living room lamp was glowing beside the Christmas tree, but the tree looked unfinished without Ruth's silver bell. Every year, she hung that bell last. Not first, last. She said a tree needed to earn its song. I used to laugh at that. That night, I did not laugh at anything. Mason's gift was still tucked inside my suitcase, wrapped in blue paper with little snowmen on it. A wooden airplane kit. Nothing expensive. Just the kind of thing a boy could build with his grandfather at the kitchen table while somebody burned cinnamon rolls in the oven. I had imagined that moment all week. Mason leaning over the pieces, Harper pretending not to care, then correcting us both because she was better at instructions than either of us. Kevin walking through the room tired but smiling. Allison taking pictures because perfect pictures were her way of proving perfect things had happened. Instead, my phone sat on the coffee table, dark and silent. I called Kevin again. Voicemail. I called Allison. Nothing. Then, just as I was about to put the phone down, a message appeared from Harper. "Grandpa, I'm sorry." Mom took my phone before boarding. I sat down slowly. For the first time since Gate B12, my eyes filled. Not because the message fixed anything, because one person in that family still knew I had been left behind. I typed back, "I'm home, sweetheart. Are you safe?" Her reply came fast. "Yes, but they told Mason you got confused and didn't want to fly." I read that sentence twice. Confused. That word landed differently than cruel. Cruel was honest. Confused was dangerous. Confused made people stop asking what really happened. Confused turned abandonment into concern. Confused made the old man the problem. A few seconds later, Harper sent a photo. It was taken from the side of a resort lobby. Big tree, gold lights, stone fireplace. Kevin stood with Allison and Mason near the check-in desk. Everyone looked clean and warm and exactly where they were supposed to be, but Harper had circled something in red. On the small digital display behind the desk, I could read, "Evans Family Holiday Suite. 5 guests, 5, not 6. I leaned closer until the numbers blurred. If I had been expected, there would have been 6. My hands went cold. Then another message came. "Grandpa, I saw the old email. You were on it before." She sent a screenshot from Allison's tablet. The first booking list showed my name. Tony Evans. Seat assistance requested. Family suite guest. Then another screenshot came right under it. Updated booking. My name was gone. No explanation. Just clean white space where I had been. I sat there in Ruth's living room with my suitcase unopened and realized something that made the house feel even colder. They had not failed to pick me up. They had made room for themselves by removing me. I called the airport help desk number Nora Whitman had written for me on the back of a coffee receipt. She answered after a few rings. "This is Nora." "Nora, this is Tony Evans from Gate B12. Her voice softened immediately. "Oh, Mr. Evans, I'm glad you got home." That kindness nearly undid me. I told her I needed confirmation that I had checked in. She did not hesitate. "I can provide a passenger assistance note," she said. "You arrived early. You had your boarding pass. You declined the wheelchair because you said your son was coming." I closed my eyes. "Yes." Nora paused. Then she said, Airports bring out the truth in families faster than Thanksgiving dinner. I gave a small laugh, not because it was funny, because if I did not laugh, I might have broken right there. Nora promised to send the time record and assistance tag confirmation. After we hung up, I stared at the tree again. The silver bell still sat wrapped in tissue, untouched. Then Harper sent one more video. The image shook at first, like she had filmed it from her lap. Allison's voice came through clearly. "Grandpa makes every holiday about Ruth. This is the first Christmas where we can finally breathe." Someone laughed softly in the background. Not Mason. Thank God. Then Kevin's voice said, low and tired, "Just don't talk about it tonight. We'll explain after." Explain. I had spent my life teaching children that explanations mattered, but some explanations are just lies wearing better shoes. I replayed the video once. Only once. I could not bear it twice. That was when I understood the deepest cut was not the airport chair, or the missed flight, or even the money. It was hearing my grief described like bad weather everyone was relieved to escape. A little later, Harper sent a final screenshot. It was from a resort email. One line near the bottom said, "Passenger adjustment confirmed. Tony Evans removed from family package." The timestamp showed it had been changed 36 hours before departure. I placed the phone on the table beside Ruth's bell, and that was when I stopped wondering why they left me at the airport and started wondering what they needed everyone to believe after they did. The next morning, I woke up in my recliner with my coat still on. That is how tired a man gets when his heart keeps walking even after his body sits down. The house was pale with winter light. Not bright, just gray enough to make every quiet thing look older. My suitcase still sat near the sofa. Mason's wooden airplane kit was still wrapped inside it. Ruth's silver bell rested on the coffee table, wrapped halfway in tissue paper, like even the ornament did not know whether it had been invited to Christmas or not. I made coffee and forgot to drink it. Then I called Nora Whitman. She answered with the kind of voice people use when they already know bad news is coming. "Passenger assistance desk, this is Nora." "Nora, this is Tony Evans from Gate B12 last night." There was a soft pause. "Oh, Mr. Evans, I was hoping you made it home safely." That nearly got me. Not the big things, sometimes. Sometimes one stranger being kind can hurt worse than family being cruel. "I did," I said. "A taxi got me home." "I'm glad." I looked down at my boarding pass on the table. It was still folded cleanly down the middle, seat number printed in black. My name right there. Tony Evans. Not confused, not missing, not unwilling, just unused. "Nora," I said, "I need to ask you something uncomfortable." "Go ahead." "Can you confirm I was at the airport on time?" She did not hesitate. "Yes, sir. You checked in early. I remember because you had your boarding pass printed, and you kept looking toward the entrance every few minutes." I closed my eyes. "What else do you remember?" "You had a small gray suitcase. You had a gift bag. And you had a wheelchair assistance tag attached to your reservation, though you told me you preferred to wait for your son before using it." I swallowed hard. That tag mattered now. Not because I needed a wheelchair, because it proved I was expected. Somebody had planned for me to travel. Somebody had also planned for me not to. Nora's voice softened. "Mr. Evans, I can send a written assistance note. It won't include private security footage, but it can confirm your arrival window and that you waited near Gate B12. "That would help." She sighed quietly. "Families do strange things in airports. I've seen people miss flights, lose tempers, forget luggage, forget medicine, but I never get used to seeing them forget each other." For the first time that morning, I almost smiled. "Ruth would have liked you." "Your wife?" "Yes, she taught music. She believed every lonely person deserved at least one witness." Nora was quiet for a second. "Then let me be one." After we hung up, I sat there with the phone in my hand and let that sentence settle over me. Let me be one. A stranger at an airport understood something my own son had chosen not to. A few minutes later, Nora's email arrived. Passenger assistance note. Des Moines International Airport. Christmas Eve. Arrival confirmed. Boarding pass verified. Passenger waited for family contact. Multiple outbound calls observed. No signs of confusion or distress until after message received. I read the last line twice. No signs of confusion. That sentence felt like a hand on my shoulder, because by then I had already seen the other story forming. Allison's words in the family group chat came through Harper not long after. Grandpa got overwhelmed at the airport. We decided not to upset him further. There it was, clean, polite, poisonous. Not abandoned, overwhelmed, not removed. Protected, not excluded. Spared. I had spent my adult life around children, and I knew exactly how dangerous language could be. A wrong word in the right voice can make a whole room believe the wrong child started the fight. Now they were doing it to me. I opened the photo Harper had sent again. Evans Family Holiday Suite. 5 guests. 5. I zoomed in until the letters blurred. Then I found the original itinerary Kevin had emailed weeks earlier. 6 names. Kevin, Allison, Harper, Mason, 2 cousins, and me listed under senior assistants. Then Harper's screenshot from Allison's tablet. Updated family package. 5 guests. My name removed. No angry note, no apology, no explanation. Just absence made official. That was the coldest part. Cruelty often looks clean in paperwork. I forwarded everything to Janet Mills. Boarding pass. Nora's note. Allison's text. Resort screenshot. The updated guest list. Harper's video. Then I called Janet. She answered on the second ring. I'm looking at it now, she said. I could hear pages moving in the background, even though most of it was digital. Janet still printed important things. She said paper made lies nervous. Tony, she said slowly, do not delete anything. I won't. Do not answer emotional calls without writing down what was said afterward. All right. And if Kevin or Allison says you were confused, overwhelmed, or unable to travel, tell them your attorney has airport documentation stating otherwise. My chest tightened. So, you think that's what they're doing? I think they are preparing a version of events, Janet said. And if they are building a story about your capacity, we need to preserve the real one first. Capacity. That word made the room colder. I looked at Ruth's silver bell on the table, then at Mason's wrapped gift, then at the boarding pass with my name printed clearly on it. For years I had taught children that truth did not need to shout if it had evidence. But that morning, sitting alone in my quiet house, I learned something else. Truth also needs protection, because lies move fast when family helps carry them. Before Janet hung up, she asked one more question. Tony, did Kevin have any limited access to the holiday account? Yes, I said. For family travel. Ruth allowed it years ago when the grandchildren were small. And the condition? That the money brought family together. Janet went silent for half a breath. Then she said, Then leaving you out changes everything. I looked down at the boarding pass again, and for the first time, I realized they had not only left me behind, they had started preparing a weaker version of me for everyone else to believe. Janet told me not to call Kevin yet. That was harder than I expected. A father's first instinct is not revenge. It is explanation. You want to hear your child say there was a mistake, a delay, a misunderstanding, anything that lets your heart step back from the edge. But Janet had practiced law for 35 years. I had practiced trusting people. That morning, her experience was more useful than mine. Tony, she said, open the holiday account activity. So I did. The Evans Family Trust portal still used the same blue and white layout Ruth hated. She always said it looked like a hospital bill trying to become a bank statement. I typed in my password slowly. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Sometimes pain makes a man very calm, because the body knows anger would waste strength. The account opened. At first, the charges looked ordinary enough. Airfare, baggage, resort deposit. Then I scrolled lower. Premium seat upgrades, private airport shuttle, Christmas dinner package, children's winter activity passes, spa credit. I stopped at that one. Spa credit. Paid from the same account Ruth created to bring family together at Christmas. I could almost hear her voice. "Tony, read that again." So I did. Then I saw the total. $18,740. I sat back in my chair and stared at the number. Not because the trust could not afford it. That was not the point. The point was that Kevin and Allison had used family money to buy a family Christmas after removing the father who helped create it. That kind of math does not show up on a statement, but you feel it, right here, behind the ribs. I printed the page because Janet liked paper and because I wanted the number to exist outside a screen. The printer hummed in the corner. Page after page slid out like evidence arriving late to its own funeral. I laid everything on the dining table. Boarding pass, Nora's note, Allison's text, resort guest list, trust statement, Ruth's silver bell, Mason's wrapped airplane gift sat near the edge of the table. I picked it up without thinking. The wrapping paper had wrinkled during the ride home from the airport. I had imagined Mason opening it in front of me. He loved airplanes. He once asked me if pilots ever got lonely above the clouds. I told him only if nobody was waiting at the gate. That memory hurt so badly, I set the gift down too quickly. It slipped, hit the table, and fell onto the carpet. A small wooden wing poked out where the paper tore. That was when my anger finally moved. Not loud, not wild, just sudden. I slapped the unused boarding pass onto the table hard enough to make Ruth's bell tremble. "They used your Christmas account for this," I said into the empty room. Then I felt foolish, talking to a dead woman. But grief makes its own rules, and honestly, Ruth had answered me more clearly through silence than Kevin had answered through a phone. I called Janet back. She had a holiday distribution card set up for Kevin, I said. "Limited use, family travel." "Yes," Janet replied. "I found the authorization. Ruth approved it when Harper and Mason were little." "I know." "She wanted the kids to visit family. She wanted no one skipping Christmas because tickets were too expensive." Janet's voice softened. "And did Ruth attach a purpose condition?" I looked at the trust summary. Family inclusion, holiday gathering, educational or elder care travel support. There it was, plain as morning. "Yes," I said. "The money was supposed to bring family together." Janet paused. "Then using it while intentionally excluding you creates a serious problem." I stared at the spa credit again. Ruth once used that account to rent a bus so children could sing carols at a nursing home during a snowstorm. She bought mittens for 3 kids whose hands were red from the cold. She paid a piano tuner with cash because the school check would take too long. And now that same account had paid for resort cocktails, upgraded seats, and a private shuttle I was never meant to ride. Before I tell you what the trust statement showed, let me ask you something. If your own son left you alone at the airport on Christmas Eve because you might slow everyone down, would you call him first, or would you call the lawyer who protected the family trust? Tell me honestly what you would have done, because I stood there for a long time with my phone in my hand, and I wanted to call Kevin. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted him to say, "Dad, I'm sorry. I lost my mind." But then Harper sent another message. "Mom is telling Mason you needed rest more than travel." I read that sentence, and the last little piece of doubt inside me went quiet. They were not just spending money. They were spending truth. I told Janet, "Freeze the holiday account until we know who authorized every charge." She did not argue. She did not hesitate. She only said, Ruth expected this kind of day more than either of us wanted to admit. That sentence made me sit down. Did she really? "Tony," Janet said gently, "your wife trusted love, but she also understood pressure." I looked around the room, the tree, the bell, the torn gift wrap, the trust statement spread across the table like a map of betrayal. Then Janet's voice changed, sharper. "Tony, there's another charge." My fingers tightened around the phone. "What charge?" "Trust Advisory Review, Travis Bell Consulting." I frowned. "I don't know any Travis Bell. He's a private financial advisor, not part of the Evans family trust, not authorized by me." The room seemed to shrink. When was it charged? 3 days before Christmas Eve. Outside, a neighbor's wreath knocked softly against a front door in the wind. Tap, 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 like somebody asking to be let in. Janet spoke slowly now. "Holiday misuse is bad, but if Travis Bell is involved, this may not be about a vacation anymore." I looked down at the unused boarding pass. For the first time, I understood Christmas might have been only the excuse. Janet Mills's office sat on the second floor of an old brick building near downtown Des Moines. I had been there many times before, to sign school donation papers, to update Ruth's medical documents, to sit beside my wife when her hands became too tired to hold a pen for long. But that morning, walking into Janet's office felt different. The whole city outside looked normal. People were buying coffee. Cars rolled through wet streets. A young couple crossed the sidewalk carrying a Christmas wreath that had already lost half its red bow. Normal life can be cruel that way. It keeps moving while yours stands still. Janet met me at the door herself. No receptionist smile. No small talk. She took one look at the folder in my hand and said, "Come in, Tony." I had brought everything. The unused boarding pass, Nora Whitman's airport note, Allison's text, Harper's screenshots, the trust account charges, Mason's damaged little airplane gift, and Ruth's silver bell, still wrapped in tissue paper because I could not bring myself to hang it on the tree. Janet noticed the bell first. Her face softened. "She kept that one every year, didn't she?" "Last ornament on the tree," I said. Janet nodded. "She told me once that Christmas did not begin in your house until that bell knew where home was." I looked down. She said that to everybody, apparently. She said it to people who needed to hear it. That almost made me smile. Almost. Janet spread the papers across her conference table with the patience of someone building a bridge plank by plank. Boarding pass on the left, airport note beside it, trust charges in the middle, Harper's screenshots on the right. Then she placed a yellow legal pad in front of herself and wrote one word at the top. Pattern. Not mistake, not misunderstanding. Pattern. I stared at that word for a long time. "Tony," she said, "I need you to listen carefully. This is not legal advice for revenge. This is asset protection and capacity protection." Capacity. There it was again. That word had begun following me like a shadow. Janet opened her laptop and turned the screen toward me. "I traced the Travis Bell consulting charge." A professional website appeared. Travis Bell. Private financial strategy, family liquidity planning, succession guidance. The man in the photo looked exactly like the sort of person who could make greed sound responsible. Clean haircut. Blue suit. Hands folded like he was explaining safety instead of opportunity. "I don't know him," I said. "No," Janet replied, "but Kevin does." She opened an email thread. Kevin had forwarded one message months earlier to an old trust administration address by mistake. It had not been flagged because the subject line sounded generic. Family liquidity plan. Janet clicked it open. I read slowly. Not because the words were hard, because I did not want them to mean what they meant. Travis wrote that Kevin's household had several active liquidity pressures: dental group expansion costs, private school tuition, insurance increases, a business credit line coming due. Then came the sentence that made my stomach tighten. Post-holiday trustee transition discussion may be easier if recent events demonstrate the need for family-level management support. I looked up. Recent events? Janet's mouth tightened. Keep reading. The next paragraph mentioned travel stress, emotional overwhelm, grief-related decision fatigue, difficulty coordinating complex arrangements. I felt something cold move through my chest. They were talking about me. Janet did not soften the truth. Yes, I leaned back slowly. For a moment, I could hear Ruth's old piano in my memory, slightly out of tune, children singing too loud on the high notes. Then I looked back at the screen and saw myself described like a problem waiting to be managed. Not a father, not a grandfather, not a man who spent 40 years keeping children safe in hallways and classrooms. A risk factor. That was what hurt. Kevin could have asked me for help. He could have sat at my kitchen table and said, "Dad, I'm in trouble." I would have listened. I might have been angry. I might have said no to foolish spending. But I would have listened. Instead, he hired a man in a blue suit to turn my age into a doorway. Janet clicked another file. Draft language. Temporary co-trustee review due to recent travel confusion and emotional instability. My name appeared in the first paragraph. Tony Evans. I stared at it. My son drafted this? Kevin drafted parts of it, Janet said. Travis cleaned the language. Before Christmas Eve? Yes. A sound left me then. Not quite a laugh, not quite grief. Something in between. So, they left me at the airport, then planned to call it evidence. Janet folded her hands. That is what it looks like. I stood up and walked to the window. Below us, a delivery driver was carrying boxes into a pharmacy. A woman held the door for him with one hand while balancing a toddler on her hip. Small decencies. Everywhere in the world, strangers still managed them. That thought nearly broke me. My son is not stupid, I said quietly. No. He knows what he's doing. Janet took a breath. He may also be scared. Financial pressure can make decent people rationalize indecent things. I turned around. Does that make it less wrong? No, she said. It just makes it human. That was why I trusted Janet. She never used compassion to erase accountability. She opened one final folder. A cream-colored envelope lay inside, sealed, with Ruth's handwriting across the front. My throat closed immediately. For Tony, if Christmas is used to leave him behind. I could not move. The room seemed to narrow around that envelope. Janet's voice became very gentle. Ruth left this with me after the trust update. She hoped I would never open it. I sat down slowly. My hands suddenly felt old. When did she write it? Late 2021. Before Ruth died. Before Kevin stopped answering quickly. Before Allison's perfect holidays. Before Gate B12. I looked at the envelope like it might breathe. Ruth really thought this could happen? Janet shook her head slightly. Ruth hoped it wouldn't. That is not the same as failing to prepare. I covered my mouth with one hand. For the first time since the airport, I felt something besides humiliation. I felt protected, not rescued. Protected. There is a difference. Rescue comes when you cannot stand. Protection means somebody believed you were worth defending before you ever fell. Janet slid the envelope closer. We do not have to open it today. Yes, I said. My voice surprised me. Steady. We do. Janet picked up a letter opener. Before she broke the seal, my phone buzzed on the table. Kevin. His name lit up the screen. For 1 weak second, I wanted to answer as his father. Not as trustee, not as the man with evidence, just his father. Janet looked at the phone, then at me. Let it ring. So I did. The call went to voicemail. A few seconds later, a message appeared. Dad, we need to talk when we get back. Allison and I think it's time to discuss getting you some help with decisions. I stared at those words, then at Ruth's envelope, then at the draft co-trustee review glowing on Janet's laptop. I had spent the night wondering why my son forgot me. Then I saw Ruth's handwriting and realized she had prepared for the day he might remember exactly what he wanted from me. Janet opened Ruth's envelope with the kind of care people use around sacred things. No hurry, no dramatic motion. Just one quiet cut through cream-colored paper while I sat across from her, feeling like the room had stopped belonging to the living. Inside were 3 pages. One letter, one trust excerpt, one small handwritten note folded twice. Janet did not read first. She handed the letter to me. I knew Ruth's handwriting before I saw the words clearly. Slightly tilted, patient. The kind of handwriting that made grocery lists look like music. At the top, she had written, "Tony, if you are reading this, someone has mistaken your gentleness for permission." I had to stop right there. Not because I did not understand the sentence, because I understood it too well. Janet waited. She never rushed grief. After a moment, I kept reading. Ruth wrote that she did not want me living suspicious of Kevin. She knew how much I loved our son, and she knew I would rather blame myself than believe he could harm me through convenience. That line hurt, because she was right. I had spent years explaining Kevin's impatience as stress, his short calls as busy workdays, Allison's tight smile as exhaustion, their discomfort around Ruth's memory as a family trying to heal. But Ruth had seen something sharper. She wrote that money changes tone before it changes behavior. First, people stop saying thank you. Then they start saying practical. Then they begin treating kindness like something foolish that needs supervision. I looked up at Janet. She really wrote this? Janet nodded. Late 2021. She was tired that day, but very clear. I returned to the letter. Ruth mentioned the holiday account. She wrote that Christmas money was never meant to buy luxury without love. It was meant for plane tickets when distance got expensive, hotel rooms when families could not fit in one house, bus rides for children's choirs, and warm meals for people who had nowhere to go. Then came the line that made my hands shake. If they leave you alone on Christmas, do not ask why they forgot you. Ask what they were hoping you would sign when you came home. I lowered the paper. For a few seconds, I could not breathe properly. Because suddenly Gate B12 was not just a chair, a missed flight, and a cruel text. It was a setup, a story, a stage. An old man left in public long enough to become evidence. Janet slid the trust excerpt toward me. "This is the holiday conduct clause," she said. Her voice changed when she said it. Not emotional now, legal, firm. Ruth had asked for the clause after several conversations about aging, money, and family pressure. Janet explained each part slowly. If any beneficiary used trust resources for holiday travel while intentionally excluding the surviving spouse, the controlling trustee could freeze discretionary distributions. If a beneficiary or spouse humiliated, isolated, or misrepresented the surviving spouse during a family holiday, the trustee could order an audit of related expenses. If the incident was later used to question capacity, stamina, grief, or independent judgment, any petition based on that incident could be blocked as tainted evidence. I stared at the page. Tainted evidence. That was what Kevin's plan had become. Not concern, not protection. Tainted evidence. Janet continued. The clause also allows redirection of the holiday account toward education, elder care, music programs, or community support if the account is abused. I looked down at Ruth's handwritten note. It was only one sentence. If they use Christmas to make him smaller, use Christmas to make someone else less alone. There she was, my Ruth. Even in anger, she was building shelter. Not revenge for revenge's sake. Shelter. I pressed the note gently against the table. She didn't want punishment, I said. No, Janet replied. She wanted boundaries. That word settled in the room between us. Boundaries. Older parents are often taught to mistake endless tolerance for love. We forgive the late calls, the forgotten dinners, the little jokes about moving slow. We tell ourselves the children are busy. We swallow the sting because we do not want to become difficult. But Ruth knew something I had been too lonely to admit. Love without boundaries can become an invitation. Janet opened her laptop again. "I can freeze the holiday account today," she said. "I can also send notice preserving all records and blocking any co-trustee petition tied to the airport incident." My chest tightened. "That will start a war." Janet looked at me kindly. "Tony, they started one when they left you at the airport and called it care." I looked at Ruth's letter again. I thought of Kevin as a boy in a red sweater, missing both front teeth, singing too loudly in Ruth's Christmas concert because he thought louder meant better. I thought of him at 10, handing me a paper ornament with glue still wet. I thought of him grown now, worried about bills and image and school tuition, letting another man shape his fear into a plan. My son was still in there somewhere, but he was not the only person I had to protect anymore. There was Harper. There was Mason. There was Ruth's name. There was the truth. My phone buzzed again. Harper. For 1 second, I feared another apology, but it was a video. Janet looked at me. "Do you want to open it?" I nodded. The video started shaky. Harper must have been filming from her lap at the resort restaurant. Allison sat at a long table under gold Christmas lights, holding a champagne flute. She smiled and said, "This is the first Christmas where we can finally breathe." A few adults laughed softly. Then Kevin leaned closer to her, speaking low, tired, and unaware the phone was still recording. "After Dad calms down, we'll talk trustee transition. Travis said timing matters." Janet froze the video. The room became very still, not because we were surprised, because the last piece had finally landed. My son had not simply failed me, he was waiting for me to calm down so he could take control. Janet closed her eyes for half a second, then opened them with the expression of a woman who had just stopped being patient. "That's enough." She turned to her keyboard. "I'm freezing the holiday account now." I looked at Ruth's silver bell, still wrapped in tissue beside the folder. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I did not feel like an old man left behind. I felt like a husband, still being held up by the woman who knew me best. Janet typed the first notice, then the second. Then she looked at me and said, "Tony, once this goes out, Kevin will know you found the clause." I nodded. "Send it." She pressed the key. And somewhere far away, at a luxury resort my family bought with Ruth's Christmas money, the account that paid for their peaceful holiday went silent. The house felt different after Janet froze the holiday account. Not safer, just quieter in a new way, like the walls themselves were waiting for the next sound. I drove home through gray Iowa streets, while old Christmas decorations still hung from porches. Some lights blinked in daylight like tired eyes refusing to close. A plastic snowman leaned sideways in somebody's yard, half collapsed from wind. Everything looked worn out. I understood that feeling. When I stepped inside the house, I noticed something immediately. I had still not hung Ruth's silver bell. The ornament remained on the dining table beside the trust papers and the unopened Christmas envelope. That bothered me more than the legal documents. Because for 42 years, that bell had never missed the tree. Not once. Even the year Ruth had pneumonia. Even the year Kevin broke his wrist sledding and we spent Christmas morning in urgent care. Even the year money was so tight, we wrapped secondhand books and homemade cookies because that was all we could afford. That bell always made it onto the tree. I picked it up carefully. The silver surface reflected the room in warped little shapes. My old hands, the half-lit kitchen, the empty hallway leading toward bedrooms nobody had slept in for days. I whispered, "I'm sorry it's so quiet here." Then my phone rang. Kevin. Not a text this time, a real call. I stared at the screen until it almost stopped ringing. Then I answered. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Kevin exhaled hard. "Dad, what did you do?" Not hello, not Merry Christmas. What did you do? I sat down slowly. I protected the trust. Kevin muttered something under his breath, then louder. Allison's card got declined at the resort this morning. There it was. Not concern about the airport. Not regret. Money. I closed my eyes. You left me at Gate B12 on Christmas Eve. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. Silence. I heard dishes clinking faintly in the background. Resort noise. Vacation noise. Finally, Kevin spoke again, tired and irritated at the same time. You were overwhelmed, Dad. We thought it would be easier if you rested. Easier for who? Another silence. Then his voice sharpened. You've been different since Mom died. That one landed deep. Not because it was fully false, because grief does change people. But grief is not confusion. Missing someone is not incompetence. And loneliness should never become legal leverage. I miss my wife, I said quietly. That is not the same thing as losing my mind. Kevin sighed hard. You don't understand the pressure we're under. No, I replied. You don't understand the chair I sat in waiting for my son. The line went quiet again. Then I heard Allison's voice in the distance. Ask him if Janet's involved. Kevin lowered his voice immediately. Dad, did you really bring Janet into this? I almost laughed at the word bring, as if I had invited trouble into Christmas instead of discovering it already seated at the table. You used trust money to remove me from a family holiday, I said. What exactly did you expect me to do? Kevin snapped then. For the first time since the airport, his anger came through clearly. We were trying to keep things stable. Stable. Another pretty word. Just like overwhelmed, just like practical. I stood and walked toward the Christmas tree. No, I said softly. You were trying to make me smaller. Kevin breathed heavily into the phone. Then he said something that told me the boy I raised was still buried somewhere under the fear. I didn't think it would look this bad. Not, I didn't mean it. Not, I'm sorry, just, I didn't think it would look this bad. Truth frightens people when they finally see it from outside themselves. I ended the call before my voice could betray me. Afterward, I sat alone in the living room until dark. No television, no music. Just the sound of the furnace kicking on every few minutes. At some point, I opened Harper's latest messages. There was a photo of Mason asleep in a resort chair holding the stuffed penguin I bought him last winter. Then another message. Grandpa, Mom and Dad are fighting a lot now. I typed back carefully. This is not your fault. A minute later, she replied, Mason asked why you didn't want Christmas with us. That sentence broke something in me more completely than the airport had, because children believe the version told to them first. I stared at the tree for a long time after that. Then I finally unwrapped Ruth's silver bell and walked toward the branches. But before I could hang it, my phone buzzed again. A new email from Paula Grant, travel coordinator. Subject line, passenger adjustment confirmation request. I frowned and opened it. Inside was a scanned itinerary change request from the resort booking system. Original booking, 6 guests. Updated booking, 5 guests. Passenger removed. Tony Evans. Reason field. Anticipated mobility and mood disruption affecting holiday experience. I read that line once, then again. Mobility and mood disruption. That was how they described me. Not father, not grandfather, not widower. A disruption. I sat down so hard the chair creaked beneath me. Below the booking adjustment was another detail. Modification approved 36 hours before departure. Requested by Allison Evans. Copied recipient Kevin Evans. My throat tightened instantly. Kevin knew. Not suspected. Not assumed. Knew. The whole time. There had still been a part of me trying to believe Allison pushed this further than he intended. That illusion died right there in my living room. Then I noticed one more attachment from Paula. A voice memo transcription from a customer service confirmation call. Female voice. Yes, remove Tony Evans from the family package. We'll tell him travel became too stressful. Operator. Would you like us to cancel his assistance request also? Female voice. No, leave it for now. I covered my mouth with one hand. Leave it for now. They left the wheelchair assistance attached because they still needed me to arrive at the airport, needed witnesses, needed confusion, needed the story to begin in public. Outside, snow started falling softly across the dark street. Inside my house, the tree lights glowed against the window while Ruth's silver bell rested cold in my palm. And for the first time since Christmas Eve, I allowed myself to say the truth out loud. My own son helped plan this. The room answered with silence. Then Harper sent one final message before midnight. Grandpa? Dad just said maybe the trust should already belong to the next generation. I looked at Ruth's bell, then at the untouched wooden airplane gift for Mason, then at the booking form calling me a disruption. And that was the moment I understood this was never just about a Christmas vacation. It was about deciding whether I was still allowed to belong inside my own family at all. The resort photos stopped 2 days after the holiday account freeze. No more smiling dinners, no more mountain views, no more captions about gratitude and family blessings. Silence spread through the group chat like smoke after a kitchen fire. Nobody wanted to look directly at what had burned. Janet asked me to come back to her office the morning after New Year's Day. Bring everything, she said. So I did. The boarding pass, Nora Whitman's airport note, the updated booking records from Paula Grant, the trust statements, Harper's screenshots, the damaged airplane gift for Mason, and Ruth's silver bell wrapped carefully in a winter scarf because I no longer trusted tissue paper to protect fragile things. Snow covered downtown Des Moines when I arrived. Dirty snow, not movie snow. The kind pushed against curbs by plows and stained gray by traffic. Real snow, real winter. That matched my life better. Janet already had files spread across the conference table when I walked in. Not stacks anymore. Systems. She had built timelines, highlighted phrases, printed emails, legal tabs. I looked at it all and realized my son's choices had become organized enough to fit inside binders. That hurt in a way I cannot fully explain. Janet handed me coffee. Then she slid one document toward me. Read page 3. I adjusted my glasses. At the top was Travis Bell's company logo. Below it, Family Liquidity Plan, Transitional Trustee Support Strategy. I read slowly. Recommendation. Following a visible holiday stress event, encourage discussion of co-trustee stabilization for aging primary holder. I stopped breathing for a second. Holiday stress event. Not airport abandonment, not humiliation. An event. Clinical. Useful. Clean. Like an old man's heartbreak was just weather damage on property paperwork. Janet tapped the page gently. There's more. Below that paragraph sat bullet points. Observe emotional reaction after travel disruption. Document confusion, withdrawal, or inability to regulate stress. Suggest assistance rather than confrontation. Position next-generation trustee authority as supportive transition. I leaned back hard against the chair. They rehearsed this. Janet did not answer immediately. Then she said, Tony, I think Kevin convinced himself this was practical, not cruel. I laughed once, a dry, empty sound. Is that supposed to help? No, she admitted quietly, but it may explain why he kept going. That was the worst part of growing older. You learn terrible behavior rarely begins with cartoon evil. It begins with pressure, debt, image, fear. A spouse whispering that everyone would be happier if one difficult thing quietly disappeared. Kevin's dental expansion had gone badly. I knew some of it already. What I did not know was how far it had spread. Janet opened another folder. Business credit lines, overdue vendor notices, insurance increases, school invoices, a second mortgage application Allison had pushed 6 months earlier. Then came the number that explained everything. Kevin's practice expansion had missed revenue projections by nearly $400,000. I stared at the paperwork. My son was drowning. And somewhere along the way, he decided the easiest life raft was his father's authority. Janet folded her hands. Travis Bell convinced Kevin that becoming co-trustee would reassure lenders and stabilize long-term family assets. By making me look incapable. Yes. I stood and walked toward the window again. Outside, people carried shopping bags through slush and freezing wind. A teenage boy helped an older woman cross the street because the sidewalks were slick. That simple act nearly broke me, because kindness kept appearing everywhere except where I had spent my whole life investing it. I would have helped him, I said quietly. Janet nodded. I know. That's the part he forgot. A long silence settled over the office. Then Janet handed me another page. Draft Family Communication. Prepared but never sent. The title read, Supporting Tony Through Recent Changes. My chest tightened before I even started reading. The document described me as increasingly overwhelmed after Ruth's death, emotionally dependent during holidays, resistant to transition conversations, experiencing travel-related distress. Suggested next step, temporary co-trustee support under Kevin Evans. There it was, the whole story, not built after the airport, built before it. The airport had simply been designed to feed it. I looked at the date in the corner, December 19th, 5 days before Christmas Eve. 5 days before I sat alone at Gate B12 believing my son was stuck in traffic. I lowered the paper slowly. He already planned the conversation. Yes, Janet said. Before he abandoned me. Yes. That word sounded uglier now, abandoned, because now I understood it had structure behind it, not impulse, structure. Then Janet surprised me. She slid a small digital recorder across the table. Harper sent something else this morning. I frowned. What is it? She overheard an argument. I pressed play. At first there was only muffled sound, dishes, a television somewhere. Then Allison's voice came through sharply. If your father keeps control, we lose everything. Kevin answered immediately. He's still my dad. And your dad still controls the trust. A long silence followed. Then Kevin said the sentence I think will stay with me until the day I die. He was easier to manage after Mom died. Then Christmas turned into grief every year. I closed my eyes. Not because I was shocked anymore. Because I finally understood what I had become to them. Not a father carrying grief. An obstacle carrying memory. Allison spoke again. Travis said once the transition starts, people will support it if Tony looks unstable enough. The recording ended there. Janet reached over and turned the recorder off. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I asked, Did Harper hear all of this? She recorded it from upstairs. I rubbed both hands over my face slowly. That poor girl. She loves you, Janet said. Enough to tell the truth. I sat down again and stared at Ruth's bell beside the trust folders. Silver, small, still shining. Ruth had understood something before I did. Families do not collapse all at once. They erode, one rationalization at a time, one convenient lie at a time, one silence at a time. Janet finally pushed one last document toward me. Draft petition for temporary co-trustee transition. Prepared. Unsigned. Ready. I read the first sentence. Due to recent travel confusion and emotional instability demonstrated during the Christmas holiday, I stopped there. I could not read another word. Because suddenly I saw the whole thing clearly. The airport chair, the missing ride, the untouched assistance request, the resort photos, the language about confusion, the stress narrative, the financial advisor, the timing, the pressure. They had not simply left me behind on Christmas Eve. They had tried to turn my loneliness into legal evidence. My phone buzzed then. Kevin, again. Janet looked at me carefully. You don't have to answer. But this time, I did. I pressed speakerphone and said nothing. Kevin sounded exhausted. Dad, we need to stop escalating this. Escalating. Another polished word. You left me alone at an airport, I replied calmly. You escalated it before I ever called Janet. Kevin exhaled hard. Then, quietly, almost desperately, he said, Dad, Travis says if we handle this privately, maybe we can still work out a trustee transition without public embarrassment. I looked at Janet, then at the unsigned petition already sitting on the table. And in that moment, I finally understood something that hurt worse than the airport itself. My son was not calling to apologize. He was calling to finish the plan. The trust review meeting took place 5 days after New Year's. Cold morning, gray sky. The kind of Iowa winter day where every tree branch looks like it has been holding the same breath for months. Janet reserved the larger conference room for it. Not because the Evans family trust was enormous, because truth takes space once people stop hiding from it. I arrived early, old habit from 40 years working in schools. I still believe important things deserve a few quiet minutes before everyone else walks in carrying noise. I placed my folder carefully on the table. Unused boarding pass, airport assistance confirmation, trust statements, booking modification records, Harper's screenshots, the transcript from Paula Grant's confirmation call, and Ruth's silver bell wrapped in the blue scarf she loved wearing during school concerts. Janet entered carrying coffee and legal folders. You ready? She asked. No, I answered honestly. Then I sat down anyway. One by one, the others arrived. Meredith Lane from Trust Compliance, Paula Grant through video conference, Nora Whitman's signed airport statement, then Kevin. My son looked older than he had 2 weeks earlier. Not wiser, just worn down. Allison came in beside him wearing a cream-colored coat and the same expression she used at school fundraisers when somebody brought the wrong wine. Controlled discomfort. Kevin avoided my eyes at first. Allison did not. She looked directly at me and said, Tony, this has gotten out of hand. Not Dad, not Tony, I'm sorry. Just out of hand. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. It did, around Gate B12. Silence spread across the room. Janet began immediately. Professional voice. Measured tone. No drama. She explained that the meeting existed to review possible misuse of Evans Family Trust holiday funds and review concerns regarding attempts to leverage a holiday incident into trustee transition discussions. Kevin shifted in his chair the moment she said trustee transition. Allison crossed her arms tighter. Janet laid the boarding pass in the center of the table first. Simple paper, folded once, my name printed clearly across the front. This, Janet said calmly, establishes Mr. Evans arrived prepared to travel. Then she placed Nora Whitman's airport statement beside it. Arrival confirmed. Passenger waited for family pickup. No visible confusion prior to exclusion-related distress. Allison interrupted immediately. We never abandoned Tony. We believed travel stress would upset him. Janet slid Paula Grant's booking modification onto the table. Requested by Allison Evans. Copied recipient, Kevin Evans. Passenger removed 36 hours before departure. Reason: anticipated mobility and mood disruption affecting holiday experience. The room went still. Kevin looked down. Allison's jaw tightened. I watched both of them carefully. Not with hatred, with the exhaustion that comes when a man realizes he spent years explaining behavior that finally explained itself. Janet continued, The evidence indicates Mr. Evans was not informed he had been removed from the booking package prior to airport arrival. Paula Grant's voice came through the speaker. That is correct. Janet nodded once. Additionally, the wheelchair assistance request remained active despite removal. Paula answered softly, Yes. Meredith Lane frowned. Why? Nobody answered, because everyone in the room understood the answer already. Leaving the assistant's request active increased the likelihood that I would still appear at the airport, still wait publicly, still seem vulnerable, still create the exact scene later described as confusion. Janet opened the next file. Trust charges, airfare, resort suite, private shuttle, spa credit, holiday dining package. Total, $18,740, paid through the Evans Family Trust holiday account. Kevin finally spoke. I intended to repay it. I looked at him. That's what hurts you most? The accounting? Kevin's eyes closed briefly. No, but he sounded uncertain. Janet moved to the final stack. Travis Bell documents, family liquidity plan, draft trustee transition language, suggested use of a holiday stress event, temporary co-trustee proposal. When the words recent travel confusion appeared on the screen, Kevin's shoulders dropped like something inside him finally gave up pretending. Allison spoke quickly. Kevin was under pressure. His business, Janet cut in calmly. Financial pressure explains motive. It does not erase conduct. That sentence landed hard, because it was true. Kevin looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time since Christmas Eve. You don't understand how bad things got, he said quietly. I answered, just as quietly. No. You don't understand how long I sat there, waiting for my son. The room fell silent again. Then Harper spoke. I had not even heard her enter. She stood near the doorway, holding her coat tightly around herself. Her eyes were red. Grandpa wasn't stealing peace, she said softly. You were hiding him from it. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Kevin looked shattered for one terrible second. Not angry, not defensive, just ashamed. And honestly, that hurt me worse, because shame means the person knew better all along. Janet gently pushed Ruth's letter across the table. I believe this should be read into the record. My hands trembled slightly as I unfolded it again. I read the line aloud. If they leave you alone on Christmas, do not ask why they forgot you. Ask what they were hoping you would sign when you came home. Kevin lowered his head immediately. Allison looked away. Janet then formally announced the trust actions. Holiday account frozen pending permanent restructuring. Kevin Evans removed from any future trustee or advisory eligibility for a minimum of 5 years. All trust-funded vacation expenses to be repaid or offset from future distributions. Allison Evans removed from trust-related communication authority. Any trustee transition petition connected to the airport incident permanently barred under the Holiday Conduct Clause due to tainted evidence. And finally, the Evans family holiday account would be redirected into the newly established Ruth Evans Holiday Music Fund. I looked at Ruth's silver bell while Janet spoke those words. I could almost hear children singing again. Nursing homes, school concerts, bus rides through snow. Ruth would have loved that. Kevin stared at the table for a very long time. Then finally he whispered, Dad, I never thought it would become this. I answered honestly, that's because you stopped seeing me as the person it was happening to. The truth sat there between us like winter, cold, heavy, impossible to argue with. As the meeting ended, Meredith gathered the documents quietly. Paula disconnected from the call. Allison walked toward the hallway without another word. But Kevin stayed seated. Just me and my son now, or what was left of us. Finally, he asked the question every broken child eventually asks, no matter their age. So, what happens now? I looked at the unused boarding pass still lying in the middle of the table. Then at Ruth's silver bell beside it. And I realized one protected a family's money, but the other protected something much harder to rebuild. Trust. Winter passed slowly after that. Not dramatically. Real families rarely heal in dramatic ways. Mostly, healing looks like quiet changes people outside the house would never notice. Kevin repaid the trust vacation expenses over time through reduced distributions and business restructuring. Travis Bell disappeared from the family conversation entirely after the legal review began. Janet later told me 2 other families filed complaints involving capacity transition coaching. That phrase still makes me sick. As if growing older automatically means somebody else deserves your voice. Allison never apologized directly, not truly. She sent careful messages, controlled messages. The kind written by someone still trying to protect how they look inside the story instead of understanding what they did inside it. But Harper changed. She started visiting every Sunday afternoon. Sometimes she brought coffee, sometimes homework, sometimes nothing but silence and honesty. One snowy afternoon, she asked me something that stayed with me. "Grandpa, when did Dad stop seeing you as his dad?" I thought about that for a long time before answering. "Probably little by little," I said. "That's usually how dangerous things happen inside families. Not in explosions, in permissions. One ignored joke, one selfish decision explained away, one holiday where respect becomes optional." Mason finally opened the wooden airplane kit with me in February. Not at a resort, at my kitchen table. Glue everywhere. Tiny wooden wings scattered across newspapers. He smiled the whole afternoon. At one point, he looked up and asked, "Grandpa, were you really alone at the airport?" Children ask painful questions with clean eyes. I answered him honestly. "Yes." He frowned hard. "That's sad." It was. Then he handed me one of the airplane wings. Said, "You can help me fix it." And maybe that is what love really looks like after betrayal. Not forgetting, not pretending. Repair. Slow repair. Kevin came to the house for the first time in early March. No lawyers, no paperwork, no Allison. Just my son standing on the porch looking older than his years. I let him inside. We sat in silence for almost 5 full minutes before he finally spoke. "I was ashamed," he admitted quietly. Not ashamed of leaving me, ashamed of struggling, ashamed his business expansion failed, ashamed he still needed help at his age. Then shame became ego, and ego became justification. He said Travis Bell made everything sound responsible. Temporary transition, family stabilization, long-term planning, professional words, clean words, words that slowly removed the humanity from what they were actually doing. Then Kevin looked at me with tears in his eyes and whispered, "I think I stopped seeing you as lonely and started seeing you as in the way." That truth hurt, but honesty usually does. I told him something Ruth once told me after a difficult year raising teenagers. Fear turns people selfish long before it turns them cruel. Kevin cried then, really cried. The kind of crying grown men try to hide because they think age should make regret quieter. I did not hug him immediately. Some stories online pretend forgiveness happens like movie music. It does not. Trust returns slower than pain. I told Kevin the trust decision would stand. No trustee authority. No control over the holiday fund. No private transition discussions ever again. And one more condition. "If you want back into this family fully," I said, "you tell the truth publicly." Kevin nodded slowly. A week later, at Harper's school music fundraiser, my son stood in front of people who had known our family for years and admitted exactly what happened. Not every detail, but enough. He admitted he left his father behind because stress, pride, and fear made him treat family like a financial problem instead of people. The room stayed very quiet afterward, not because people hated him, because most adults recognized pieces of themselves in the confession. That is the uncomfortable thing about stories like mine. The villains are rarely monsters at the beginning. They become dangerous because ordinary selfishness goes unchallenged too long. The Ruth Evans Holiday Music Fund officially launched that spring. School choirs, travel support for isolated seniors, holiday transportation for families who could not afford to reunite. Small things, human things, the kind Ruth cared about most. And on the first Christmas, after everything happened, Harper helped me hang the silver bell back on the tree. Last ornament. Same as always. She smiled and said, "Grandma would have liked this." I looked around the quiet living room, at the lights, at the repaired airplane sitting on the shelf beside Mason's photo, at the tree finally holding the bell again. Then I answered softly, "She would have liked that we told the truth." Because truth matters, especially inside families. If someone loves you only while you are useful, that is not love. If someone calls humiliation help, pay attention. And if you are growing older, please remember this. Needing compassion does not mean surrendering dignity. Thank you for spending this time with me today, and for listening to a painful part of my life. Please tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are right now. And if you still have parents or grandparents in your life, call them while you can. If this story touched you even a little, please subscribe to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now, and maybe YouTube already knows which one your heart needs next.